Welcome to the Mental Wealth Podcast, a place where you can find all things related to mental health, especially for men. I feel like it's not talked about enough. I'm really glad that you're making it here today and making some time for this video. So let's get started. Today's topic is really practical. I feel like we all had to deal with this sometime in our life. We all had some stress that is going on and we need to cope with it, whether it is in a healthy way or not so healthy way. But the main point I'm trying to drive here is stress is inevitable. What does that mean? It means that you can't go through life without being stressed sometimes, and anyone that tells you otherwise is just not being realistic. With that said, there are good ways and bad ways of dealing with stress, So we're here to talk about the importance of dealing with stress in a healthy way and acknowledging that there may be some behaviors that are not so helpful, not so loving, if you will, towards ourselves. This video is all about that, and I'm excited to share what I've learned in my journey so far and what I've read. So I'm grateful that you're here with me, and let's do it. I do want to emphasize that coping in a healthy way is extremely crucial. Why do I say that? It's because, as I mentioned, stress is inevitable. Now, that means that it could be a daily thing, a weekly thing, and if we compound these little actions that we use to cope with it, quote unquote, so if we compound it over a lifetime, this could make or break our lives, make or break our health. Imagine if someone is drinking every time they're stressed. And one time might not be totally destructive, but over time, this could mess up their health, mess up their liver, mess up their teeth, mess up their relationships, mess up their mind. So this is really important because I do believe in the power of habits, because these tiny little actions that we do continuously over our lifetime can literally make or break us. It's important to be conscious about how we choose to react to stress, how we choose to cope with it, and how we choose to elevate and change our state. Because let's face it, being stressed is not fun, and being in a negative state, if you will, is not fun either. Yes, we want to figure out ways to elevate our state, change our state, but let's make sure that it's a helpful way and that is a way that is going to serve us in the long run. Another distinction that I wanted to make before we get started is that there's a difference between healthy coping and escapism. What do I mean by that? I believe that the same action could be used in totally different ways. For example, we can go for a jog because we're not feeling well, and then after that jog, okay, we feel a lot better, and then we continue our work or we face our fears. With that said, if we use that same jog as an example and then we go on that jog and then we don't face our fears after, we don't confront the situation that needs to be confronted, then simply it is escapism. Yes, it might help us feel good in the moment, but then the goal of this video is to help us be more courageous in facing our life, be more courageous and help us adopt a healthier mindset towards struggle and towards stress, because stress, like we said, is going to happen anyways, but at the same time, we could, calm ourselves down, regroup, and then tackle life, This is not, I'm just going to feel good and not face my problems. No. This is all about being more courageous with ourselves, and hey, sometimes we might not feel great, but that's why we have these tools to calm us down, to help us build more courage. That way we could get back in the fight and kick some ass. Now, I am not implying by any means that this is easy. Let's face it, change is uncomfortable. It is. And nonetheless, I think it's so worth it, because we're worth it. We're worth fighting for, we're worth changing, and we're worth loving ourselves. And this is the whole point. The whole point is that you're more loving towards yourself. What's the point of life if you don't? You know what I mean? It's that simple. Sometimes I think life is not that complicated. It's not easy, but it's not complicated either, Yes, it might be difficult sometimes, but I feel like the core truths are very simple, Treat yourself well, treat others well. But I guess what I'm trying to say, and there's a good quote that encapsulates this, it really resonated with me. it says, change and loss travel together. And I thought that was just so beautiful, very succinct, very well said. It just means that you can't change without losing anything. You need to let go of something to make more space for a healthier habit, for a better relationship, whatever it may be. And this is the point. You can't change without losing something. But that doesn't mean it's not worth it. You know, if something is not serving you anymore and you know it's not healthy for you, then maybe it's time for a change. Even if it hurts, it's worth it. I'm going to mention a personal story before I start with the two types of shifts that I want to focus on in this episode. So the mindset shift and the behavioral shift. But before we get to those, let's start with a personal story. So as you all know, I am a college student. What that means is that I have to deal with finals every semester. I know, crazy. So this is also important because I'm personally not a fan of the finals. You know, it's very stressful, it's hectic, you have to study a lot. With that said, I remember one time in the finals where I had to really study a lot, and basically I couldn't make it to the gym for 3 days or something. And this is very unlike me because I try to go to the gym because it's fun and it's healthy. At the end of the third day, I'm studying and I'm just like so sick of it. I don't even want to study anymore. I'm like, I don't want to do this, you know, this sucks. So I like to think of this moment as a fork in the road, where it's just like, okay, I could go down this rabbit hole of negative thinking and self-pity and possibly negative coping skills. Or I could just take a step back and be like, hey, maybe I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now, and that's okay. I could take a step back and maybe I could just go take a walk or go to the gym or do something helpful. So that's what I did. And I can't say I did that every time, but the moments that I did and chose that, I guarantee you that I felt a lot better about it, maybe 80 or 90% of the time, than if I stayed in that situation or I did something that I'm not really proud of that made me feel good in the moment, but then crappier for a lifetime after. So in that moment, I made the right choice and I went to the gym. I know it's super simple, but then I felt a lot better afterward. And I'm mentioning this story not because it's impressive or anything. I'm mentioning it because it's super simple, but it's very effective, you know? Those basic things like getting enough sleep, like moving your body, like, you know, eating right, drinking enough water, hanging out with the right people. Those things are super elementary, super basic, but they're high leverage. They're very effective. So that's why I'm mentioning the story, and hopefully you got something out of it. You know, whenever you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling stressed, just take a step back and ask yourself, what would bring me the most comfort right now? What would bring me something that is comforting in the moment and will bring me true comfort in the long run? And this is a really important theme. We all know that there are some activities and things that you can do that are extremely gratifying in the moment, but in the long run, it's destroying people's lives. And this is a big deal. That's why I'm talking about this. This is real life, you know? Like, all of these addictions start with people being stressed out and then wanting to just stop that pain. For lack of knowledge or skills in coping, they just do some terrible habits and that destroy their lives. So that's why I'm talking about this. And hopefully you got a little bit of value out of this little story. So let's start with the mindset shifts. And the first thing that I want to bring is what I touched back on in this little story, which is being present. This is really important because a lot of people sometimes go through life and they're kind of sleepwalking. Like, they don't even know that they're stressed out, and they don't notice themselves until they're actually doing the self-destructive behavior. And then they're like, oh, what am I doing? So it's just really important to cultivate that skill of being present. And how do we do that? I've talked a lot about meditation, and it's a very helpful tool in doing that. But it's not just that. It's not just practicing at 10 minutes each day, but it's focusing on whatever you're doing totally and completely. If you're doing your homework, focus on it totally and completely. Don't let your mind wander. We're humans, our minds will wander inevitably, but the trick is to just bring it back and keep that attention on the present moment, because ruminating too much is not really that helpful, and it actually stresses us out more. So being present pays a lot of dividends. Another topic that I want to talk about when it comes to mindset shifts is self-compassion. Now, this is really important because I feel like a lot of people nowadays are very hard on themselves. They set these grandiose expectations about what they should accomplish, who they should be. I feel like social media has a lot to do with that. The internet has just expanded people's desires in crazy ways. And I just feel like being compassionate with yourself is so underrated these days. It's really hard to find. So a really simple way that I like to think about it, someone has explained that to me before, and it's like, talk to yourself as you would talk to a close friend or to a loved one. If you really, really follow that advice, you wouldn't say half of the stuff that you would say to yourself. I think that positive self-talk is a great tool. And this is where, again, presence comes into play. If you notice yourself talking to yourself in a bad way, then pause, take a step back, and be compassionate with yourself and congratulate yourself on the things that you did right, and ask yourself, how can I do things better next time, instead of making negative judgments about yourself. A better question is, how can I improve? How can I do better? How can I feel more at peace? Or how could I face the situation in a better way next time? It's those questions that open possibilities for improvement instead of just limiting ourselves. Another important mindset shift is gratitude. Being grateful is such a game changer. I started doing it every day. And this is especially important first thing in the morning, where your state can really determine the rest of your day. You know how people say sometimes I woke up on the wrong foot? This is probably because they started the day in a bad way. And that momentum carries out throughout the day. So being grateful first thing in the morning and really noticing 5 very specific things that you are grateful about, and imagining your life without them, and then realizing that you're actually pretty blessed to have those things. Things like a warm bed. Right now it's really cold here, so I'm grateful that we have air conditioning and heat, clean clothes. These simple things that we take for granted, but if we actually lost, it would actually, make our lives pretty uncomfortable. So gratitude is a game changer, and not only when you wake up, but also when you're feeling stressed, because this is when it matters most. This is when you want to use it to switch your state to a more helpful state, to a more positive state, to a state that is going to assist you in actually being more at peace, being someone who you're proud of, someone who can cope with adversity even when it hurts. If you're feeling stressed next time, pause for a little bit, take a few deep breaths, and count 5 things that you're really grateful for, and see how you feel after. I want to mention that, as we talked about, change is uncomfortable and change doesn't come immediately. What that means is that you need to be very patient and persistent when it comes to changing yourself, because it's not going to come easy and it's not going to come overnight. You're going to have to be persistent and keep at it. And a very helpful thing that worked out for me is tracking my changes. If you track it and then you look back at it and then you see, okay, there is a positive trend that is going up, that is incredibly motivating. Don't expect yourself to change overnight. Habits are built over a lifetime, and it takes a little bit of time to switch them. So being persistent and being patient with yourself and compassionate, those things go a long way in helping you keep going on that journey and enjoying that journey too, and loving yourself in the process. Many people think that uncomfortable emotions are a curse or something that they shouldn't be feeling. But I urge you to think about it in a different way. What if you switch that from, oh, it's very uncomfortable, I got to get rid of it, to what is this emotion trying to teach me? Because often emotions are a feedback that the body or the mind is trying to give us about the situation. Instead of thinking about it like, oh, I should get rid of this, Think about it as, what is the lesson that is coming from this emotion? What is this emotion trying to tell me? And really, there is a lot of lessons from it. So try to ask yourself that question next time and be present with the emotion, because it's really not going to kill you. If you really stay with it, it's not going to hurt you. You can just be present with it, and you realize that you have much more power when you can just sit with the uncomfortable emotion and let it pass like a cloud. With all that said, these consistent minor changes that you keep doing every day, this will help you build more trust in yourself, build more of a better relationship with yourself. You know that, yes, things might get tough sometimes, but that's okay. You realize that even if they get tough, you're going to be there for yourself, and you're going to follow these habits that are loving towards you and that are going to bring you true comfort. That's why I believe that self-discipline is self-love. As Will Smith said it, it's basically building a great relationship with yourself, knowing that when it's uncomfortable, you're still going to stick to those routines that are helpful for you, that are healthy, and that are going to elevate your mind and body in the short term and in the long term. Moving on to the behavioral shifts part of this episode. So, we've talked and we established that stress is inevitable. However, there is a huge difference between someone who is chronically stressed all the time, every day, in every waking moment, and someone who is stressed occasionally. Because first, that person is going to need less willpower to resist temptations or things that are going to derail them. Because, quite frankly, there's less stress, so there's less need to hold yourself from doing bad things or coping in a negative way, if that makes sense. If there's less chances that you're going to do something, then you don't need willpower as much. This is important because we want to learn how to reduce unnecessary stress. Yes, some stress is inevitable, but then another part of it we can control. I feel like Stoicism is very helpful in that sense, because building that mindset of, okay, maybe I'll focus on just what I can control, focus on my area of control, and then accept the rest. Accept what is outside of my control. Sounds super basic, much harder in practice, but it's super worth it. Because if we just focus on what we can control, and we do our best, and we accept whatever else that is outside of our control, we're going to reduce a lot of unnecessary stress and suffering that we definitely could do without. So, reducing stress is a great way to helping us cope with life better and maybe enjoy it even more. And since we addressed a lot of the mindset shifts, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the day-to-day actual strategies that you could use physically when stressful situations happen. And one that I want to start with and that have worked well for me is the box breathing technique. So it's basically you count in your head 1, 2, 3, and 4 slowly as you're breathing in, and then you hold for 4, and then you exhale for 4, and then you hold for 4. So that's the box. It's 4, 4, 4, 4. And trust me, it sounds super basic. It's actually pretty hard to do, but it's very effective. So I urge you to try it out, and maybe you'll like it, and I'm going to introduce you to a bunch of different techniques, and you try them out and see which one is your favorite. So box breathing, highly recommend it. 4 seconds, inhale, and then 4, stop, 4, exhale, and 4, hold. Super simple and very effective. Another tool that I've talked about and will continue to talk about on this channel is journaling. Yes, journaling. And I find that writing things down on paper is much more helpful. I don't know what it is, but I feel like we choose our words more consciously when we're writing them down physically, because it's obviously harder and it takes longer to write them down. But I'm digressing. There's something very relaxing about just journaling on paper and just letting our thoughts flow, expressing ourselves, kind of like venting, but you don't have to have someone listen to you in that sense, which is pretty convenient because sometimes there might not be people that you want to talk to at the moment, or there might not be available, or you just don't feel like sharing. That's okay. This is why journaling can be your kind of like a therapy session, but in private. So, highly recommend it. I've been doing it for about, I don't even know, 5 or 6 years. It has worked out a lot for me, and it helps me just clarify my thoughts and make sense of what's going on inside. I really recommend it, so give it a shot and see if you like it. Another powerful stress buster is exercise. And this doesn't have to be, lifting 100-pound dumbbells. You can just go to the park, go for a jog, or do some stretching, do some yoga, anything that moves your body and gets you out of the house. And if there's more people around you, I don't know if you're an introvert or an extrovert, but seeing people around can sometimes get you out of your head and to be more alive and more present and happier. So check it out. Sign up for a class, or just go to the gym with your buddies, play a sport, whatever it may be, just move. We're not built to sit, we're built to move. And since we're on the topic of people, I have found throughout my journey that having positive relationships in my circle can be very helpful, especially in times of crisis. Sometimes all we need is just someone who is understanding, empathetic, and honestly just a good listener. Someone who just listens and accepts us for who we are. Sometimes we're not really looking for solutions. Maybe we just need someone to empathize and show some compassion. So, again, positive relationships don't come out of the blue. We have to invest time and effort into them, but let me tell you, it's so worth it. So, make time to connect with a friend. Try to do it every week. And try to just have a mindset of like, hey, scouting out potential friends that are more helpful, more positive, more happy. Those people and those characteristics in them are going to rub off on you, like it or not. They say you're the average of 5 people that you hang out most with. So pick people that are going to elevate your average. They're going to make you happier, healthier, more successful, more at peace, whatever you may be desiring. Just pick people that you want to become like. And this should be a criteria for evaluating your relationships. So it's helpful to be conscious about that. Now, when it comes to relationships, I feel like even a better step to improving our mental health is going to therapy. I talked about therapy before on this channel, and I'm mentioning it again because it's very, very effective. I feel like therapy has a lot of stigma around it and mental health in general, and that's why I started this channel. And therefore, I urge you guys to try it out, whether it's online or in person, but I do prefer the one in person more because I feel like that's the whole point. We want a genuine connection, someone who understands us, who sees us for who we are, and who's compassionate. So it's also worth mentioning that obviously not all therapists are made equal. You should do your research before picking a therapist, because some therapists may be more qualified to assist you than others, and some are more specialized in other areas. So pick someone who is going to fit your needs. Another helpful tip is a grounding technique that I like to use if I'm feeling super overwhelmed. And I'm grateful that I learned it because it really works. So it's basically count 5 things around you that you can see, name them in your head, and then 4 things that you can feel, whether it's a chair, a shirt, a water bottle, and then 3 things that you could taste, 2 things that you could smell, and then 1 thing you could hear. I kind of, these are pretty interchangeable, but the point is to connect your senses. It doesn't really matter how many things you could hear or smell, but it's just basically helping you to ground yourself in the moment. Instead of just getting pulled by all these thoughts, you can just bring your back to the present moment. And this is why it's connecting you back to your senses, to the present, and to realize that it's okay. You're safe. Now, I threw a lot of things at you in this video. And with that said, I want to challenge you to try some of these techniques in your day-to-day. Maybe for the next week, every day, just try a different technique. See how it works for you. And that way you could know what things can be very helpful to you when it actually comes time to really, really need it. So try them out, see which one you like better. Hopefully you got some value out of this video. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Mental Wealth, the podcast for mental health for men. If you like it, please do like and share and subscribe. Share it with someone that might need it. And thank you so much. Stay grounded.